Hey guys, welcome back and thanks for tuning in for Real News against the onslaught of fake news here in 2017. Guys, we're only a year away from the famed 2018 world currency as predicted by The Economist magazine in 1988. Get ready for a global currency. Happy 2017, Andy. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. And as usual, no shortage of things to say. We just had Trump's first press conference, which was, as anticipated, a complete anticlimactic event. And all the, as I've said in my previous articles, what I think 2007 is going to be is the year of money printing, draconian government actions, and monetary revolution. And it's starting off just the way I expected.
Yeah, well, you're burying the lead, though, on that press conference because guess what? I mentioned fake news right here at the start of the interview. CNN is now being accused of peddling fake news, running with this bogus BuzzFeed report that was widely discredited, even by the New York Times, and claiming that Trump is in the pocket of the Russians, and Trump is fit to be tied. He's telling the organization CNN itself, "You're terrible. You are the fake news."
Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude. No, I'm not going to give you a question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you state categorically that nobody... No, Mr. President-elect, that's not appropriate.
And he's hitting the nail right on the head because they truly are the fake news.
Well, it's incredible. In fact, someone just emailed me saying that on the bottom of CNN's screen, and now instead of saying breaking news, it's saying real news. And I'm going, I mean, my God, has it come to this, especially when they are the originators of the fake news. But look, this is the Orwellian society that we're talking about. When, I saw a comment today, Trump said, what are we, Nazi Germany? And I'm thinking, it's from my perspective, I've considered, what we do for a living, I consider it a financial concentration camp because for so many years, what's now being seen in the mainstream media has been what's gone on in the financial markets, with a complete commandeering of markets, with rigging and fraud and conspiracy, which is now out in the open, and now it's out in the open in the public view as for the regular news. So, there's a reason why it's all coming to a head at once. You're talking about crashing currencies, geopolitical instability, social revolutions around the world, and that's why I truly believe 2017 is going to be unlike any we've witnessed throughout history.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you at all. Honestly, that's why I wanted to mention the Economist cover right at the beginning of the interview. We are 1 year away from that 30-year prediction coming true. And all they need to do is burn down all the currencies, burn the currencies of the world to the ground. Hey, I want to ask you about Bitcoin. It was less than 2 weeks ago that Bitcoin was reaching new all-time highs, piercing through $1,100 per Bitcoin. And I just want to read this for folks. This comes from Bix Weir. As we're having this conversation today, guys, Bitcoin is down over $100, back down below $800 as we're having this conversation. And Bix writes, quote, "The reason for the latest Bitcoin slam is that China is investigating the shenanigans of the Chinese Bitcoin exchanges that report massive volumes. Note, this is not to shut them down or curb capital flight out of China, as may have been proposed or is otherwise being reported, but rather to ensure the validity and trustworthiness of Bitcoin operations in the future, as China will soon embrace Bitcoin in the very near future." And here's the important part, Andy. This is why I want to read this. He writes, "Now is the time to brace yourself for the crash. There will be no pricing for any assets, including Bitcoin, during this period, as all exchanges and third-party dealers will go under because they all require fiat money to run their businesses." It sounds like he's predicting what you're predicting, which is calamity, Andy.
Right. Well, look, as I said, I've said that 2017 is going to be the year of draconian government actions, which was foreshadowed by what happened in India late last year. Governments are terrified because their currencies are collapsing, their economies are falling apart, their debt is spiraling, and they have no way of paying. And of course, all the political changes that are pretty much ransacking and overturning pretty much every major political leader in the world, and that's not gonna change this year when you have, for instance, France and Germany and Holland, same kind of things. It's causing them to do crazy things. And in the case of Bitcoin, look, and I've said for a while now, I think it's a ally of gold and silver. It's yet another alternative currency and storage of value type asset that governments are fearful of. And no one is more fearful of it than the Chinese, because right now they're experiencing record capital outflows from their country. So this was one of the natural ways of cracking down, was one, to manipulate their markets, and two, to come out and label anyone who's trying to find any means of taking money out as a money launderer. And yes, I agree with Bix also. I've wondered why there's so much exchange volume. Just like the gold exchanges, just like pretty much all exchanges, there's a lot of derivatives out there that are causing mayhem in the markets. The difference is that in favored markets like stocks and bonds and commodities, the governments have no problem with it. But when it's anything that's going against them, like Bitcoin, they all of a sudden come out and say, "Well, you're a money launderer." Just like in India, cash. If you have cash, you're a money launderer, and one day gold, you'll be a money launderer. Anything that's not their dying fiat currencies is money laundering, and the problem is that all that's going to do is create more demand for these alternative currencies, starting with gold and silver, because people realize the alternative is going to be the cashless society that they all want, which essentially means, like in India, figuring out ways to literally steal your money from you.
Well, that's why we turn to gold and silver in physical form, and I just want to ask you about Martin Armstrong's prediction. Once he was let out of prison, he took on an anti-gold meme, really, to some extent, and he's been predicting sub $1,000 gold. I just have to say, because I know the playbook of the criminal international banks, I would so welcome sub $1,000 gold, because you and I both know where this thing is ultimately headed. And sub $1,000 gold would be an absolute gift. But we see gold bouncing back. It's at, I think, 1192, maybe higher than that as we're having this conversation. And silver is bouncing off lows again. It's approaching 17. I don't think Martin Armstrong is going to be right. I think he may be doing the bidding of those that let him out of prison, trying to talk gold down. Regardless, sub $1,000 gold would be an absolute gift to those of us who are awake and aware.
Well, first of all, I'm going to disagree that it's a gift. After all these years, I'm sick and tired of smashes and people saying like, well, I hope it gets lower so I can buy more. I've bought as much as I'm going to buy. And at some point, the more that they push prices down, the more damage they do to the world. And I'm no longer of this. I wish I had lower prices to buy from. I want these people out. And look, if the prices went under $1,000, we'd be cleaned out of supply immediately.
Right.
I mean, it would happen like in 2008. But as we speak, actually, it's 1195, which on the dot is gold's 50-day moving average. Silver's 1681, which is just below 1695, which is its 50-day moving average. So, there's a fight to the death going on because, basically the powers that be, they saw what happened that when they unexpectedly Trump won and they immediately changed their meme from Trump is horrible to Trump is good and doubled down their manipulation efforts and goosing stock markets and smashing gold and creating this ridiculous Trumpflation meme, which doesn't even make sense. I mean, it's not going to happen. He's not going to be able to do anything that he wants to do. Frankly, most of the things he wants to do aren't even good for the country. As you saw, like in this press conference he had, he's going, they're going, stocks went back up when Trump said he's going to create tariffs. I'm going, really? Does anyone really believe that's going to be good for the country? Let alone Mexico, our neighbor to the south, which is literally having a revolution as we speak. They're having riots and the currency hit a new all-time low. No, these are not good things for the country. And this whole Trumpflation meme is going to fall apart the second he gets in office and everyone realizes he can't do anything he wants to do, not to mention the debt ceiling suspension comes up just 1 month after it ends just 1 month after he gets in office. So they're going to be fighting about that and all these Obamacare and all this, nothing's going to get done. But, when it comes to Martin Armstrong and Harry Dent just said $250, which is so, first of all, he's been wrong about everything. But aside from the fact of that, $250 gold, you're talking about there's not a mine on the planet that's operating. And we're talking about record demand right now, which I assure you, if gold was $250 an ounce, would mean that all these currencies around the world have crashed and there'd be infinite demand for gold and silver. That's how silly it is. And I'm not going to go into the conspiracies about Martin Armstrong. I think people know well what I think of him, which is very little, and I really could care less what he has to say about anything. The funny thing is that guys like Martin Armstrong and Harry Dent, the things that they talk about politics and the global economy and demographics, I agree 100% with. But the way that they've characterized or predicted markets is completely alien to me. And frankly, like any other newsletter writer, they can say, I said this, but the thing is that they've, generally speaking, been no more right than anyone else. And, you get a lot of news, you get a lot of viewers when you say dramatic things, and that's why a lot of people do it. It's sad.
Right. Well, I want to ask you about the plunging peso here in a second and get your thoughts on what's driving that. But first, I just want to bring this up as it relates to Trump and apparently some things that he's doing that are very much in opposition to what Hillary Clinton would be doing if she was the president-elect, which would be more of the same, this drive towards globalization of the United States as opposed to sovereignty and the health of we the people. In December, President-elect Trump announced a deal with Japan's SoftBank to invest $50 billion in the United States and to create 50,000 more jobs for Americans. Now, I don't know if that'll come to fruition, but it's definitely the type of thing, it's the type of news we would have never gotten if Hillary the Witch Clinton had gotten back in the White House.
Well, first of all, if she was president, I mean, we could be in World War III by now. I mean, look what Obama's talking about now with all this Russian stuff. They probably would have already been doing it by now. And so that's why you and I, it's not even like I liked Trump or anything. I just was so desperate for her not to get in. But as for these things, they're absolutely ridiculous. SoftBank, with some software company, is going to be investing $50 billion in the U.S. Why now? I mean, why would you invest in a place where you're going to make really low returns? What, so they can make Donald Trump happy? Ridiculous. In fact, I saw yesterday, it said Jack Ma, the guy who's in charge, who runs Alibaba, the Chinese Amazon. Yeah. He met with Trump for like 40 minutes and comes out saying, I'm going to create a million jobs in the U.S., right? And it's the same thing. He just wants publicity so people will buy the stock. But the fact is, he's not creating any jobs. All he said was, yeah, I'd like to expand my platform into the U.S. More. So maybe people will use it more and maybe sell stuff like they sell on eBay. That's not creating jobs. It's all BS. It's the same with SoftBank. And, just the same thing with all these car companies. Of course, they're all going to make like a token announcement. So from a PR standpoint, it looks good. But I mean, look at GMs. They made this announcement, and then it turns out they were lying. So, right. And this on the same day as Volkswagen got fined $4.3 billion for their lies about their exhaust system. So look, don't believe any of the hype. Don't believe anything going on this honeymoon about how the economy is going to get better because Trump is going to get in, just like it was going to get better because Obama got in, and it was going to get better because George Bush got in. It's all BS. And the point is, we're done with the honeymoon now. He's getting in office now, and once he gets in office, things are going to change. In fact, what I wrote today, I wrote an article called 2.5%, enough said. And basically, it was a follow-up to two articles that I wrote back in early 2013. One was called 3.0%, enough said, which I wrote literally the week that Treasury bond yields peaked at 3%. And then another one called 2.6%, enough said, which I said in May, which was just when it broke below 2%, 6%. And I said it's going to stay down there. And sure enough, it did. And what I said with today is, I said, look, everyone's all talking about this Trumpflation meme, which is complete BS. There's absolutely nothing to it. And the whole big thing is it's going to cause interest rates to rise, and that's because the economy's good. And I said, well, how come interest rates aren't rising? I mean, if that's the case, we're going to have this Trumpflation. You have soaring stock prices and soaring lead and zinc prices. And you even have the Chinese selling and all the rest of the world selling $400 billion worth of treasuries. Well, how come treasury yields are not rising? I mean, it's 2.33 right now. So I said, don't be surprised if, the numbers, and this was Bill Gross and Jeff Gundlach today talking about 3% and 2.6% as like the key resistance levels. And I said, yeah, absolutely. And how about this? I think there's a good chance that 2.5% is the new resistance level, because this economy couldn't take higher interest rates 3 years ago when we had much less debt and the world was in much better shape. Today, everything's falling apart. They can't take higher rates. I mean, look what's happened to mortgage rates, just with mortgage applications and refinancing since it's happened. Retail is falling apart. Of course not. So don't be surprised if the whole meme of the Fed raising rates and inflation is going to go out the window quickly. Of course, what that also means is that currencies are still going to be crashing against real items of value, whether nominal interest rates are going up or not. So gold's going to win either way. But I think the big change that's going to come very quickly in Trump's administration is to realize that all that hope and BS, which was literally invented the night he was elected, and that morning when markets were down, is going to be completely discredited, and we're going to be back to the same kind of BS that we were in before, where the Fed is forced at some point to join the monetary parade with the QE4 and negative interest rates that we know are coming, and the war on cash, and it's all coming.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that comes to mind as I'm hearing you say these things is that the BS is coming from the Fed, the central banks, the rulers of this planet. And I think that Trump really is a wrench in the spokes of their New World Order system, to the degree that he is changing the way business is done in Washington. And I have to tell you, you said if Clinton had gotten in, we could be in World War III already with Russia, because that is what she was driving us toward. And the thing is this, I posted a video that I think is one of the more important ones I've ever done just yesterday. It's called Putin Just Exposed the Plot to Destroy America. And Andy, what I did is I shared his Christmas speech, Putin's Christmas speech, which, had it been given by a leader of our country, by our own president, it really would have warmed the hearts of all Americans, I think, who would have tuned into that speech. So I dissected the speech, I shared the speech, and in that Putin speech, he said many of the things that we've been hearing Trump saying, which is the nation state, the sovereign state, is the best incubator of happiness and prosperity.
The nation state remains the true foundation for happiness and harmony. I am skeptical of international unions that tie us up and bring America down. And under my administration, we will never enter America into any agreement that reduces our ability to control our own affairs.
And that's what Trump is doing, is he's standing in opposition to this globalization that we would have continued to see under a Hillary Clinton presidency. And frankly, he wants to have a conversation with Putin as opposed to exchanging nuclear weapons with Putin, which I think is a darn good thing. All right, so now I want to ask you about the peso, the plummeting peso. Why is it plummeting, and how bad could it get? Because the last thing we want is a Venezuela just across the border.
Well, we're going to get that. I mean,
and
put it this way, it's not just Mexico, it's all these currencies. That's the whole point. They're all falling apart for the same reason, the strong dollar. And the strong dollar, the dollar has been going up not because of expectations of good things, it's because of fear. And also on top of that, that prompts all the currencies that are pegged to the dollar to devalue, like the Chinese yuan, which is, the biggest of all, the biggest deflationary issue of all that's out there. So, when you look at the euro collapsing to a new low at the same time as the Mexican peso, you realize it's the same things that are affecting them both. I mean, yes, Trump certainly is being particularly hard on Mexico, which is not going to be any good for our relations, and certainly not good for our trade, being that they're one of our biggest trade partners. But the point is, anything that makes interest rates go up or fear go up is going to make currencies go down. And that's why all of this stuff is going to fall apart. Interest rates have to go down, and the currency markets have to calm down under the assumption that there's going to be QE to infinity. And that's going to be the big understanding this year. And, it may well make the Mexican peso go back up a little. Not that it's going to go up against gold and silver. I mean, gold in Mexican pesos is at an all-time high right now. But again, the big meme that's going to be killed is that Trumpflation even exists, and that there's going to be anything positive that's going to change on January 21st from the way it was economically beforehand. Now, I agree completely, as I said before. Thank God it's not Hillary Clinton, because at least he's not going to push for socialized health care and war with Russia on day one. Right. But again, as I've said before, it doesn't matter who is president. Putting him in this situation, it's impossible. He could talk as tough as he wants. He could do as many tweets as he wants. But it's not going to change the economic situation in this country. We need to default on our debt. And he's even hinted at when he was running, he put his foot in his mouth about renegotiating the debt. Well, that would be a default on the debt. And that would crash all the financial markets around the world. So again, good luck to him. I think he has good intentions, although I'm not thrilled with all these billionaires and Goldman Sachs people he's hiring. But I don't think it really matters what he does, because it's going to be pretty soon that everyone realizes there's nothing he can do.
Andy, I want to read a headline to you that I wish came from the United States press regarding our own government. It says, Hungary will use all the tools at its disposal to sweep out NGOs funded by George Soros, which serve global capitalists and back political correctness over national governments, end quote. Hungary to launch crackdown on all George Soros-funded organizations. When things get this volatile globally, it seems to be these banksters, the Soroses, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, that always come out on top. And if humanity is to stand a chance this time, humanity needs to come out on top by cracking down on these people. Wouldn't it be great to see that headline once Trump is in office?
Well, again, I don't assume anything like that will happen, but in time, there's just too much rot that's falling apart, and in time, people like Soros just are not going to have and he's just one of them. They're not going to have the ability, because they're going to lose control of all. I mean, look, with the people in Italy vote in the Five Star Movement. The people in France vote in the National Front, and we got Trump over here, and this kind of movement spreads around the world in France and all these places. How is he going to be able to control it? I mean, his people are being overwhelmed by the will of the world, and it's going to be an ugly period in between. But the fact is, they are losing. They've lost control of the currency markets, that's for sure. They've lost control of the political leadership, and pretty soon they're going to lose control of the central banks, because the ramifications of all these collapsing currencies is going to be the end of fiat currencies. Eventually, it's going to be the end of fiat currency regime in general. People are going to use other ways to transact with each other, because no one will ever trust governments again. So, look, Soros had his time and his type, and I think that time is passing. But sometimes it takes a long time for these things to happen. But I think the peak of his and those globalists' power was November 8th. When, or actually you can say a combination of June 23rd with the Brexit and November 8th, because they really thought they had those things in the bag, and they lost. And now that the movement of anti-globalism is going to spread, in fact, the spread of nationalism, which is, it's good in some ways, but for global trade and debt and currencies, it's terrible, is going to be very, very powerful in the coming years, to the point that will be the next threat to the world, as opposed to the globalism that's the threat right now.
Well, I think one of the things, if we're going to look at the cup half full here, it's this. When all else fails, these globalist banksters, these politicians in the pockets of the banksters, take us to war. And that was the playbook. That was the Clinton playbook if she had become president, is go to war with Russia and then blame this entire collapse on what, World War III? And at this point, it looks like we may just have been pulled back from the brink of World War III by the election of Donald Trump. So at the end of the day, we have to at least be really thankful that nukes aren't flying around this planet, or about to. And for those of us who see the cup as half full, despite this collapse that's coming, well, Mike Maloney has said it. It is going to be the biggest wealth exchange in the history of the world, and in that wealth exchange is opportunity, Andy.
Well, absolutely. Again, it's a perfect example of you cross that bridge when you get there. I mean, as far as I was concerned, the only thing that mattered to me all fall was, do not let this woman get in, because I can't imagine what she's going to do. She's literally telling us she's going to go to war with Russia. And even after they lost, they're just still trying to provoke it until Obama's last day. And of course, she would have immediately gone for socialized health care and who knows what other horrible things. So yes, I'm thrilled that we got by that. But as I said, that doesn't mean that all the economic issues we've been facing, which were created by her husband, by George Bush, by Barack Obama, by pretty much everyone going back to 1971, we went off the gold standard, that piper has to be paid. And they've done all they can to push that off, including this final Trumpflation, market rally, hit gold, and create optimism that's based on nothing. This is their last hurrah. So I would say, yeah, I'm glad that she's not there. But, I'm always worried about what comes next. And even the people with the best of intentions, when they're faced with really terrible situations, you never know what they'll do, especially a guy like Trump, who's, pretty much he does what he wants to do. And, I think he's going to be in for a very, very challenging situation from the get-go, that when he realizes that all his tweeting and all his bluster doesn't mean anything that he wants is going to get done.
All right, well, I want to leave you with two other really incredible headlines that I think speak to the fact that Donald Trump is on the side of the people of this country. Here's the first one. Healthcare chaos emerges after Trump backtracks, demands immediate repeal of catastrophic Obamacare. In the state we live in, as you know, Andy, premiums are going up 67% this year and breaking the backs of the families forced to buy this Obamacare coverage. And here's the other headline. Donald Trump, and this comes from Time Magazine, I love this, Donald Trump's choice of RFK Jr., Robert Kennedy Jr., as vaccine czar is a terrible idea. Well, you know why they're saying that, Andy? Because Robert Kennedy Jr. has talked at length about the dangers of childhood vaccines and the now clear and present link to autism, as proved by the whistleblower, the CDC whistleblower, in the film Vaxxed. And again, it's Donald Trump mixing things up and trying to give some, I think, common sense back to this government. and maybe put some end to the corporate fascism that we've seen in the revolving door at the FDA with these vaccine companies, then leading the FDA. We see the same thing with the banks, don't we? It's why the regulators don't do anything about the manipulation of gold and silver.
Yeah, but that said, he's got 4 people from Goldman Sachs on his cabinet. He just hired for nominated for Undersecretary of Finance, a Goldman Sachs guy. His Treasury Secretary, a Goldman Sachs guy. The guy who also was his campaign guy. The head of his Economic Council, the thing that Summers did for Obama. That guy just came fresh from Goldman Sachs, and the guy he just nominated to be head of the SEC. Lawyer for Goldman Sachs. So, I mean, I think there are some things he certainly wants to change, but he certainly is more leveraged personally to the current system of low interest rates and manipulated markets than anyone.
Well, we all are, though. We all are, because you and I both know how this story ends if interest rates go back up to where they're supposed to go.
Right. I'm just saying. I'm reserving judgment.
I hear you.
On Trump the president versus Trump the candidate until I see what he does. And again, a lot of the things that he's going to have to do are simply to just maintain order and be a good diplomat, because the pain is going to be felt during his administration, no matter what he does. So again, I voted for him because I thought there was a greater chance that he would do things that were good for the nation than others. But he hasn't done anything yet. So let's see what he does, and reserve judgment for afterward. I hope he's has our best interests at heart. We will see.
Well, he has done something already, and I want to give him credit. He's kept us out of World War III with Putin. I think Putin is smart enough to know he now has somebody in the White House that he'll actually be able to have a conversation with, as opposed to just spewing endless rhetoric, which is exactly what Hillary Clinton was going to do, spew endless rhetoric right to the brink of World War III. And here's one other thing. Audit the Fed bill gets new push under Trump, and I guess Senator Rand Paul has reintroduced the legislation to audit the Fed, which was stalled by Congress, of course. And I don't know. I mean, I think if we're going to look at cup as half full, let's just leave it at this. We're all still alive and breathing thanks to the fact that no nukes are flying.
I wouldn't count on the Fed being audited, but we will see what happens. I hope it is.
Andy, how do people protect themselves?
Look, I put out an audio blog last week. It was titled "The Most Undervalued Precious Metal Prices in Modern Times." And actually, maybe I was lucky when I wrote with a question mark on December 27th. I wrote an article that was called "Gold Prices Bottomed in December Again," and sure enough, it looks like they have. Look, the time to make decisions about your future is right now financially, and there's just no two ways about it. And Miles Franklin is now entering our 28th year in business, not a single registered complaint. We have A+ Better Business Bureau rating. We now have some of the most innovative products out there. We now have online purchasing. We now have a private safe deposit box program in Toronto and Vancouver, and a staff with more than 20 years of experience each, some of them more than 30 years. So you can call us 800-822-8080, email me at ahoffman@milesfranklin.com, or of course go to milesfranklin.com.
Hey guys, I just want to leave you with this. As we think about our friends, neighbors, and colleagues who don't know any of this language and get their news, what they call news, from CNN, if you imagined a book with all the monetary secrets in it laying outside in the gutter, and your neighbor were to find that book and read it, it's like listening to the interview that we just had here. Spread this information to your friends and neighbors. I'm telling you guys, time is precious. Time is getting very, very short, and what's coming is going to be very ugly for those that are unprepared. Thanks for joining us at SGTReport.com for real news, the antidote to corporate propaganda and CNN's lies 24/7. Andy, thanks so much.
As always, a pleasure.
And guys, thanks for visiting us at the Phaser and the LibertyMill.com as well. Have a fantastic rest of the week and a wonderful weekend. God bless.
Yeah, I'm very happy with that call that he did with Sessions, man. I mean, Sessions is great. Not only is he strong on immigration, but you can bet your bottom dollar that the reality and the potential of him going after Clinton just got a lot stronger.